1980 science fiction has all of those elements that make greatness in cinema and storytelling.
Buckaroo, what's up?
It's an amazing period of sci-fi.
It was sci-fi movies that you began to take seriously.
The characters were stunning, so you can relate to it.
It was very entertaining and frequently very touching.
It was a fantastic experience, and I had a gasp.
I loved looking up into the stars and imagining what's up there.
Time travel, multiple versions of yourself. A lot of those movies are really awesome.
Sometimes sci-fi does reflect what's going on in society.
Running Man preempted reality TV.
This little movie predicted the world that we're living in right now.
Like Kirk could talk to somebody in their watch or their little phone. We thought, oh, that'll never happen.
Scotty, beam me up.
I just loved that stuff growing up.
I like it if there's a bit of a human element.
No matter where you go, there you are.
You go through so many different emotions.
Can you say E.T.?
Jeff Bridges, he is Starman.
Yes, that was me in Galaxy of Terror.
Blade Runner was just amazing.
More human than human is our motto.
Road Warrior today is more relevant than when we shot it.
You can run, but you can't hide!
When anybody says which is the best Superman, they say 2.
Dune, Universal thought this thing's gonna be huge.
Terminator, Jim had a certain vision.
I'll be back. In Predator, I was the ultimate tough guy.
I ain't got time to bleed.
It still plays.
Vasquez, she was a soldier. She had nothing to lose.
Sigourney just took care of me on set.
Get away from her, you bitch!
RoboCop 1 is a one-off.
Your move, creep.
Paul Verhoeven made us care.
The costume is not like this. The costume is like this.
Laser guns, lightsabers.
Star Wars set the bar. The aliens, the world building.
The Last Starfighter, groundbreaking CGI.
Unbelievable. These guys are geniuses, you know.
It's over, Prime.
Gordon's alive.
Shall we play a game?
You'll find her. That's what he does. S.D. Bliskin.
Comey's name.
Oh, Back to the Future.
Great Scott.
They're kind of cheesy. It still was like this wonderful cheese in a way.
So many amazing sci-fi movies in a single decade.
We felt so creative and we were so loose.
There will never be another time like it, ever.
I mean, it's all classic.
You've got to look at it and be proud of it.
Can't we go back to what I grew up with, which is the beauty of sci-fi and imagination?
My God, it's full of stars.
That's the magic of sci-fi, man.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Captain Logan Show. It's 80s night. I am Captain Logan, and joining me, as always, is my wonderful chat moderator, producer, and dancer, DJ Martinez. Hello, DJ. What's up, sir?
What's up, man? Didn't know if you introduced me because I was rocking so hard there, I couldn't even hear you.
We're going to party like it's 1985.
That's how it goes. What is up, man? How you doing? How's your night been?
I am doing okay, man. I'm excited about the show. We were going to do this last Thursday, and then we ended up putting it off for a birthday show for my son. And so now we are finally doing the 80s Captain Logan show, supported by the In Search of Tomorrow documentary. You just saw a 4-minute trailer for it. It looks fantastic. I'm so excited about it. And like I mentioned last week, they've invited me to do a commentary with them. They're doing a couple of those a week. We haven't got that set yet. I don't know when that's happening. Hopefully I'll have the time and be able to do that with them. And it didn't occur to me until just now, looking at that trailer, the thing I should ask them to let me do the commentary for is Howard the Duck. That is definitely the movie I should do for them.
That'd be hilarious.
Because I've been
the only person who's done that actually before.
Yeah. I actually have probably done more writing on that movie than nearly anyone. Yeah, and I've got a commentary on it.
Nearly than anyone who would admit it.
I'm sadly quite qualified to do that movie. My little guy Mikey, he's 2 right now, and he's got this DJ bucket of bathroom ducks or toy ducks that he plays with. And he's been walking around the house. I guess that he got this from Jason, because he's definitely not seen Howard the Duck. But he's been walking around the house going, "That's a duck! That's a duck, man!"
It's amazing.
It's like my favorite
he's
thing
such a poser.
To quote with yeah, exactly. It's like Mikey, you don't know what you're talking about, dude. You've never seen that black guy stick his head out the bus and go, "That's a duck, man." That's probably my favorite cameo of all time, or not. I shouldn't say cameo, extra of all time, or at least it's one of them. It's up there with "He stole that guy's pizzas."
Oh yeah, well there you go. I mean, once you're with the pizza guy, you know you're in good company.
Yeah, exactly. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks a lot for being here on the show. Tonight we're going to take questions, hopefully mostly about pop culture of the 80s, and I'm going to do my level best to field stuff as well as I can. This is not the decade, of course, that I know the best. I was more of a 90s kid, certainly grew up more in that decade, but my kind of, formative years, learning what the world was about, were initially in the 80s. I was 6 years old in 1990. So that tells you how much of the 80s I experienced. And of course, I remember little things here and there from being really little, but the 80s informs the 90s so much that obviously I grew up with a lot of the material from that decade and saw that really interesting transition period from the kind of VCR era into the internet era. So I will field stuff and talk about stuff as best I can. You guys are going to see some of my seams tonight. I've already seen some questions about movies I've never seen, and people will be like, "How have you never seen that, Cap?" Like somebody earlier mentioned The Breakfast Club. I've never seen The Breakfast Club. There are certain movies that, I feel like I know too much about to sit down and watch them now, and I still should, but it's you hear people talk about stuff all the time. You never think to actually sit down and watch it. It's like, I've seen that. It's like, well, no, I've not seen that. And then there's movies that I haven't seen since I was a kid, or since they came out, or close to when they came out. I saw The Goonies in the early 90s when I was 9 or 10, but I've not seen that since then, and it didn't really appeal to me. So stuff is definitely going to come up tonight that I don't know enough about, and I kind of wish there's a part of me that wanted to bring in somebody older than me who had really experienced that decade to do this show, but it just didn't work out that way, and I'm going to do my level best. But anyway, once again, supporting the Search of Tomorrow documentary tonight. If you would like to pledge to that documentary on Indiegogo to avail yourself of some of the cool perks that they're going to have, get DVDs, Blu-rays, t-shirts, stickers, posters, that kind of thing, you can use the affiliate link in the description, and that will take you right to the Indiegogo page. That is going to be a 4.5-hour mega documentary that's going to chronologically go through all of the science fiction films of the 80s, popular, obscure, and otherwise. A lot of things in that documentary that I had kind of in that trailer that I'd kind of forgotten about and wasn't on my radar for, this is going to be in this movie. So of course I'm really stoked for it, and I hope you guys are too. So consider pledging and supporting them in the Indiegogo. That is supposed to come out out toward the end of the year. And now, let's go ahead and get right into the questions. If you want to make sure that your question, comment, idea the topic is discussed on the show tonight, you can leave a super chat in any dollar amount, and that will make absolutely certain, guarantee that we discuss your topic. And if you can't do that, don't want to do that, feel free to leave, not to worry. Thanks a bunch for being here. Feel free to leave a pre-written question in the regular comments, and we will do as many of those as we can as well. But I'm already seeing the super chat starting to pour in a little bit, so we're going to knock out some stuff. I never want to say lickety-split, so I'm not going to. But we will get rolling and see how many things we can knock out tonight. We're going to cap things off at about an hour like we have been lately, but I opened with with basically a big ad, so we may go 5 minutes over tonight. All right, DJ, let's go ahead and get right into things, man.
Oh, right. The first pre-written that's slipped right in.
I'm sorry, real quick before you do that, let me also say, if there's anything really pressing that anybody wants to talk about outside of this topic tonight, feel free in Super Chat, but we won't be answering anything pre-written that's not about this topic unless we just don't have enough interest in tonight's topic. That's how we always handle these theme shows. Oh, by the way, also, can we get like a cyber round of applause for DJ for this kick-ass background? This is awesome. It's such a great logo. You're always making these fantastic thumbnails, and I was not expecting a background tonight, and I got that from DJ midday today, and I was like, yes, that's awesome. So I'm so excited to be surrounded by neon.
Yeah, it kind of came together. It's kind of like a combination of the regular Geekvolution space style and the Captain Logan show neon style, and it came together pretty well.
That's a really good call. Thank you for deconstructing that for me, because I hadn't actually really put that together, but it's true. It's cool. You should take off the 80s show part of it and just like make a background that is this without that, and we should just occasionally use it for the heck of it, because it looks really cool. Like, you should make like a Captain Logan show in that style, like Captain Logan show logo, but in that style, and then put it down there, and for no good reason, we should just use it occasionally, because it looks so good.
Just to keep them on their toes. Yeah, but we do what we want here. That's how it goes.
Transports me right back, DJ, to 5 years old.
Here we go. As I was saying, from Cinematographic, the first one, and this does have to do with the topic, he says, Captain DJ, if given a choice between Back to the Future, Breakfast Club, 89,
there it was,
Trading Places, Roger Rabbit, or Terminator, which 80s reality would you and your family live in first?
Live in first? I like the idea that we could hop dimensions and go to some... No, you're stuck living in all of those. But pick the first one. 2 of those movies I've not seen. I'll let you guess it which ones, besides, well, I said Breakfast Club already.
2 of those movies I have seen.
I would have to say, you're going to have to finally sit down and watch Back to the Future. It's beautiful. It's a classic. You have to do it. It's a night perfect movie. I would say probably the Back to the Future world, just because, I mean, it's heightened and, more out there than the reality really was. It's almost like it's weird. It's almost like looking, even in the present day of that world, at a rose-tinted version of the 80s, kind of. Even though, or at least a more simplified, I don't even know if wholesome is the right word, but it doesn't look like the real world. It doesn't have as much of the urban plight and stuff, or at least we don't deal with that much in that as we do in the real 80s, until you get to the Back to the Future 2 and Marty McFly ruins the present day, and then it looks like that. But when you go back to the 50s and even going into the future, it's like everything has a little bit of this kind of rose-tinted thing, and even the present day of that has that. So that's probably what I would pick.
Yeah, I've only seen Breakfast Club out of that list. I saw 89 once, but I don't think I'd want to live in that dark, creepy, crazy world.
It'd be fun to visit, but I wouldn't want to live there. And I certainly wouldn't walk down any back alleys after seeing any movies.
That's true. No movies there.
Although living in 89 would be really funny because conveniently all of the major areas of that film are actually in like a 1-block radius.
That's true.
Because they built...
It's like they shot it on a set.
Yeah, and they built everything, but they built them all right across from each other, so it's weirdly like a town square, but it's supposed to be this big city. It's like you could almost put the town square with the clock tower from Back to the Future, like next to that area from '89. It's like it's a small town, but we just pretend like it's a big metropolitan city. It's really funny.
All right, well, TH1, first super chat of the night. I know not technically 80s, but have you heard a sequel series to the Flintstones called Bedrock, set 20 years later, in the works? Rock on, and I'll be back.
I had not, but that's fascinating. It's funny you say that, like, in a roundabout way. It feels like it should be 80s, right? Because the Flintstones was a 60s show. And then if it was set 20 years later and we treated it like 20 years after the, like, in-universe Flintstones, it should be a prehistoric 80s as opposed to that prehistoric 60s. That would be fantastic. The 80s would have been the time to do that. It's really funny that, like, now 40, 50 years later, I guess 50 years later, is we're finally doing that. Well, I wonder what that's going to look like. Because, like, I don't know, saying 20 years later, I would assume that it's that still everything they're going to, like, parody and make fun of there is going to be modern day stuff, and they're just going to have older versions of those characters. I had not heard about that. That sounds like a thing that could be absolutely terrible or could be really quite brilliant. You know, it could be like that really tongue-in-cheek, really smart Scooby-Doo show that came out in the, like, late 2000s. I wish it was done like that.
That'd be cool. Is it a show, did he say, or a movie? Series. Yeah, he said.
I thought he said series. Yeah.
Jedi Knight. Which NES game would you choose to be stuck in forever?
Is that going to be? Which of this list of 6 NES games would you want to start with being trapped
in? First.
Exactly. Man. Ooh. Is that going to be the whole night? Is just going to be like, what of this 80s thing would you like to live in?
But an NES game would be so terrifying to live in.
I know. Really? What is any of them?
I guess, what is the most expansive NES game? Because I don't want to lose my mind because I'm stuck in this tiny little... is Mario?
Okay, so it's funny you say that because the most expansive NES game, at least as far as landscape and like, you know, traveling around, the closest thing to an open world in an NES game, in an NES game is probably Metroid. But you don't want to live in Metroid because you get lost, and it would also be like dank and creepy, and it would basically like be like living in the Aliens universe, but you'd have like all this space. I don't think, but, well, I say space. It would also be really claustrophobic. So, no, you wouldn't want to live in Metroid. The nice thing about the Mario universe is all the, like, you know, physics-defying that you could do. So, like, that would be fun. And just platforms
Unless that's just for
floating. Sorry, what?
Unless that's just for the plumbers, and you're just like a Goomba who can't even walk.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of other things that are, like, not too surreal where it would even make sense to, like... you know, fit yourself into it.
I'm gonna go with Legend of Zelda because it's kind of open world. It's outside. It's nice and pretty trees.
Daniel Davis says Final Fantasy, and I could see that for the same reason. I guess we're just going to RPGs. Maybe Mother. I mean, that would get creepy and weird in places as well. But yeah. DJ, that's the first in a trilogy that continues on into Earthbound, and the only one, which was Mother 2, and the only one of those we got here at the time was Earthbound, but I'm pretty sure the original Mother was an NES game. Yes, Tom, Zelda was NES. I had the gold card. I did indeed. Wow.
And now you hate Zelda and all fantasy things. Who would have thought?
I've just never been any good at it. I get lost, and I suck at puzzle solving, and yeah.
If you knew your wife back then, you would have been golden.
Well, so far I don't feel... Yes, because she could backseat drive for me, like with Hitman. So far, I don't feel as horribly underqualified to do this show as I thought I was going to, because I at least can bring up things that I know about, but that I'm terrible at and am not going to do. So that's good.
All right. Well, you are the utmost authority on this next one. From
Dago
John
says
Todd.
Castlevania. I don't think I'd want to live in that universe, especially after seeing the Netflix show. But then I guess just an NES game, it would be, you know, a little bit more tongue-in-cheek and silly, and so I don't know, maybe it would be fun to explore that castle if you could like turn all the bad guys off.
Yeah.
I would just hope that I didn't have to walk upstairs as like rigidly as Simon Belmont.
John Ty.
DJ, have you ever played a Castlevania game, like a side-scrolling Castlevania?
I've looked at. I think I watched one AVGN video on Castlevania, and that was like my first experience with that whole franchise.
You can't just jump up onto a staircase in early Castlevania games, at least through like Bloodlines on Genesis and and Super Castlevania. You have to you walk up to a staircase and then you have to press up in front of the staircase, and then that gets you up a staircase. The first time I played a Castlevania game, that drove me insane, and I could not figure out how to get on the friggin' stairs.
Did you freak out? Did you get mad like Freddy? Like, how do I get on the staircase?
No. Freddy doesn't get frustrated because he can't figure things out. Freddy gets frustrated when he loses.
Okay.
And that's the difference. Like Jason and Jason says this all the time now. He's like, I rage quit really easily. He loves that word now, rage quit. I also kind of do that. Freddy doesn't rage quit unless you beat him at something. Like, he will try the same thing over and over again until he finally figures it out.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
he's just competitive.
He's got that kind of perseverance, and he's competitive against himself. So, like, he's gonna figure it out.
That's funny.
That's my 6-year-old, for anybody wondering who we're talking about.
All right, John Ty, would you do a superhero rewind on Superman versus the Elite?
Well, yes, eventually. I certainly hope to when I finally am able to get back to writing reviews, because I just don't have the time right now, and I've got my twins coming, so we're on hiatus for Rewind right now, and we'll be for at least a few months, and I just don't know what that's going to look like yet. But the plan is when my life gets something like back to normal, which I guess is never possible with 5 kids, but when I get close to some semblance of normality, it's gonna be right back to try to eventually do every superhero movie ever made. That is a superhero movie, so of course I'm going to do that. That movie's been getting a lot of love lately. It keeps coming up more and more, which I've been kind of surprised by. Like, people loved that movie when it came out, the folks that saw it, but I think it was under a lot of people's radar, and lately I've been hearing that in the same breath as, or just with just as much respect and love as something like Under the Red Hood. Like, people, especially with our audience, people just, nearly every show the last month, someone has mentioned that, and I think that's really interesting. Wow. Unless it was the same guy every time, but I don't think it was. I think it's been different people.
John Ty, let us know. Was it you, or has it been different people?
Was it you?
Mr. Abato, would the TMNT fit into the Howard the Duck world? Interesting question.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Would the TMNT fit in the Howard the Duck world? I'm assuming he means the film.
I mean, sure, why not? I mean, you've already got everything in the kitchen sink in that movie, so sure, you might as well. Like, that movie can't decide what exactly it is and who it's for, and like how raunchy it really wants to allow itself to be. You've basically got a multiverse in that movie, so I mean, you can just about throw it. What's really funny is Howard the Duck is like a multiversal movie that's not crossing over with anything, and it's just Howard the Duck, but that makes it kind of one of the most versatile things to try to blend with anything you'd want to. So yeah, you absolutely could do that.
Howard the Duck is basically a mutanimal.
Well, no.
I mean, he's an alien, I know, but
because, I was just gonna say, because the mutanimals were actually made with ooze, just like the Ninja Turtles were. They're mutates.
I know he's from a universe of ducks. I haven't seen the movie, but I know that much. I think I have seen the movie. I don't even know at this point. CM Productions.
It's weird how much of a consummate 80s movie that is, despite how like bizarre and kind of awful it is. But like I enjoy a lot of things about that movie. Like, I don't mind going back and watching it. It's very, very, very strange. And I have the ending of that movie burned in my brain from when I saw it on TV when I was a kid. I was so confused by what I was looking at. And then when the Super Mario Brothers movie came out and everybody was talking about how awful it was, I thought it was a better version of Howard the Duck. I was like, oh, they fixed Howard the Duck now.
It's all about expectations.
That was that movie. But no, to your point about the mutanimal thing, any other like anthropomorphized like animals with kind of an attitude could fit. I would think that the first thing you would maybe consider mixing, I'll go this far, with Ninja Turtles, if Marvel was to get together with IDW like DC has for some things, would be something like Howard the Duck.
Yeah. Street Sharks.
Mr. Roboto, Howard the Duck's world is not all ducks. Not in the comics, but I think it is in the movie. I mean, all we see is dogs.
Literally all we see. Not just the people, like everything in the room.
Everything's a friggin' duck. Yeah, that's right. But I still say it makes no sense they don't know what pizza is.
Pizza. Well, that's what, and that is why the TMNT could not exist in the universe.
That's a good point. In that movie, yeah. Or the turtle. Well, no, they could, because again, they would come from a different universe, right? So they just show up, and you have Donatello like complaining about how confused he is about the parallel development, where he's like, how could you possibly have exactly Indiana Jones but not pizza? It doesn't make sense.
Good times. We'll write that. We'll get on it. CM Productions, semi-related. How would you rank the 4 current TMNT animated shows? Ooh.
Wow. Well, I have to put the new one at the bottom, only because I only saw the pilot, and it just didn't feel like it was for me, so I haven't given it another go. So, like, I don't know that show well enough to rank it, but it wasn't what I wanted, so, I mean, just from a pilot. So that goes at the bottom.
Yeah, I thought you recently told me to check that out. I thought you had gone back to that.
No, the 2012 show. The 2012 show.
Oh, I love the 2012
That's
show.
different than the current show. Yeah, I've never said go look at that show.
Okay, I think
never, ever. Yeah, Rise of the TMNT.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about when we had that conversation. I was like, wow, kind of surprised me with that. But no, I love the 2012 show. Mine would go 03, 12, I guess 80s, and then I guess the new one, because I've only seen that first pilot episode.
Yeah, I don't feel like I've seen enough of I don't know. I was going to say I don't feel like I've seen enough of 2012 to quite rank it, over 87, but I mean, who am I kidding? Like, it's got some real character development and some decent storytelling for a moral at the end of the story show. Like, in a lot of ways, I probably said this before, but the 2012 show is, in my mind, a lot like Batman Brave the Bold was, where that show was supposed to be what kids thought they were watching when they saw the 60s show, and I feel like that's what 2012 is for with Ninja Turtles for the 87 show. Because when I was a kid, I took 87 really seriously. Like, it wasn't hokey to me. And it's a difficult thing to go back to some degree. It's easier for me to watch than it is for Vince. He just won't go back to it at all. But it's also way too formulaic and does the same 3 or 4 episodes over and over and over again. I think those first 5 episodes as kind of a mini-series are pretty good for, and kind of pushing envelopes a little bit for the kind of throwaway, disposable 80s cartoon thing that was, taking its cues from He-Man and Transformers, where it's selling a toy before it's telling a story. And so then you have to put it on kind of, a Power Rangers level. It's a toy commercial before it's anything. And then when you get to 2012, our tastes have just gotten more sophisticated. And, I mean, I know we had 03 before that, but 03 was much more for the adults that had grown up with Ninja Turtles, even than it really was for kids. And I don't think it ever quite found the same kid audience that 87 did because of that. And then 2012 came back and was a force again. A lot of kids grew up with that show in the same way that my generation grew up with 87. It was surprisingly big. I mean, like, the toys apparently sold pretty well. And they went right back to the same formula that they did in 87, where they just made everything from that show into a toy, and it took up like half a toy aisle in Target and Walmart. It was really cool to see Playmates go back to all that.
Yeah, that's really cool. And the one thing I'll give the newest iteration is thank you for finally naming it something with a distinguishing name, because TMNT shows, they never give them names, and it's so hard to keep.
It's one thing I'll give Rise of TMNT. Yeah, Digos just give me crap for what I said with Transformers. I realize that people really like G1, and that it's there's some actual stuff to grab onto with that as well. That was a bad example. I'm just saying that was made to sell toys. Was all I meant with that.
All right, Super Billy gives us a super chat. The 70s/80s contributed so much to pop culture that they more or less doomed mainstream entertainment to the abyss of creative bankruptcy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I agree with that. I have to agree that there is a downhill slope from after the 80s, there's a lot of wonderful things in the 90s, but you're also seeing the beginnings of we're going to remake everything and we're banking on name recognition and all of that we get into really hard in the 2000s all the way up to now. And you certainly had a lot more original, really creative things it felt like going on in the decades that you're talking about. But I don't think it's because we were out of ideas. I think it's because things got so commercial. And like I would blame the way we sold these things and marketed them maybe more than and just like 80s consumerism and materialism and like the credit card age and all of that more than I would the actual pieces themselves. Like the problem wasn't too much material. Frankly, we're kind of running into that now. There's just so much vying for everybody's attention. I do think we're going to get in a place where it's like, nope, that's been tried, and or at least people are going to feel that way, certainly. I'm talking about mostly with television and independent things and stuff like that. One of the reasons it's fun to go back and talk about this decade is because as much more complicated as it felt if you were living through that decade than the previous decades, going back to the 50s or 60s, it was a simpler time. The 80s feels like that to me from where we're at now. Like I would much rather go back and look at this decade where I feel like I can kind of get my mind around what was going on. But then of course we've also had a lot of hindsight to really deconstruct it and analyze it and figure out why people were behaving the way they were at that period. Dago's Transformers Prime is really good, what I've seen of it. But I haven't seen that. Is it a sequel series or is it technically just that show continuing? It had like an animal or beast thing for a couple seasons too, and I've never seen any of that.
Speaking of Daghost and his sarcastic
Austin.
Comments,
always.
Earlier when we were talking about this, he says, "What 80s song would you want to live in first?"
I don't think I would want to live in an 80s song. It certainly wouldn't be that Rick-rolling Rick Astley song. You wouldn't want to live in that forever. That'd be the worst.
Did you see the guy who got a what are those little scanning things that you scan with your phone camera? It's like a barcode, but it's not a barcode. It's
it's
QR code.
Like QR code. There you go.
QR code tattooed on his body that takes you to that video when you scan it.
That is video. The ultimate Rickroll. Yeah, scan this, see what happens. You just got Rickrolled.
People are crazy.
My buddy Tim Lyons, who passed away a few years ago, and his cover was the Huey Lewis cover I played us in with today. He had I'm trying to remember what it was. I think he did that song at karaoke once, and then somebody recorded it, and then it was played at his funeral. So Tim Lyons rickrolled his own funeral, and I think that's like the grandest rickroll. I mean, I doubt very seriously if that was his idea, but even if it wasn't, that's pretty amazing.
That's amazing. That's pretty awesome.
But anyway, man, to actually answer the question, I feel like even a lot of my favorite 80s songs I would get so tired of if I had to listen to them like 150 billion times in a row. Like, I make no apologies for this. I grew up with arena rock from the 80s, and so I like a lot of bands like Styx and REO Speedwagon and stuff like that. But like a lot of those were big like tear-jerky ballads, and you'd want to rip your spine out after too many listens of like an REO Speedwagon ballad. So I don't know. If I had to go to that band, it'd be something like Riding the Storm Out, something that actually kind of rocks before it would be a power ballad.
People are bringing up Weird Al songs.
See, I love Weird Al, but I would lose my mind. Probably nearly any song. And if it was a Weird Al song, it wouldn't be an 80s song because most of those are like 3 minutes long, and you go insane. Yeah, I don't know. It would maybe be a TMBG song, because The Ugly Giant starts in the 80s, in the mid-80s, like 86, 87.
Okay. Well, I'm pretty sure that was just a joke, but we took it very seriously.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
There you go.
We take, you can't troll
we
the
need a
show.
disclaimer.
It's not possible. Like, if you try to troll me, I will just treat your question as a valid, legitimate question. And then the joke will be on you, because everyone will come after you because I took your question seriously and then discussed it for 10 whole minutes.
True that. That's what we do here. That's the disclaimer. We're going to take that part out, cut it out, and put it at the beginning of every episode.
Yeah, there you go, Matthew
Scare away
Bates.
the
Can't fight this feeling anymore. Yeah, I would lose my mind. I couldn't do it. And it certainly wouldn't be a Robert Palmer song. Like definitely not. Could you imagine like doctor, give me the news? I got like for forever, for all eternity. No, you couldn't.
All right, Super Billy, get us back on track here. To what degree should we temper our collective nostalgia for past decades that we better facilitate new creations for present and future generations?
Yeah, good question. My very simple answer is allow yourself to be influenced naturally and then move on. What I mean is be creative and come up with like story and character. If we're talking about like just because we talk about this within media, we talk about this with music and anything. But if we're talking about story specifically, movies, comics, anything fictional, like what you like, inundate yourself with whatever you want to inundate yourself, and then those influences will come. I mean, it's the same thing that I say about theme, right? Like, I think sometimes this makes sense, but much of the time, I think it's a much better idea instead of saying, I'm going to sit down and write a story about, like, poverty or about racism and just come up with your character and your situation, and then the social commentary will come if you really believe in something passionately and it's naturally there through a situation. I feel and like you might say, well, Cap, don't you have to come up with then a situation that directly relates to that? No, not if it's something you really care about. Like whatever is really important and matters to you, you tend to come by those things naturally, and then you're probably approaching it in a lot more like real and earnest and in interesting way than like forcing it on people. I feel the same way about nostalgia. I don't think you have to start from a nostalgic place for most things, unless the whole point is parody or throwback or something. And you just can't. You can have too much of a good thing. So when you say, how much should we temper it, at the point where everything is parody to where cliches don't exist anymore because we don't even remember what the thing was that we're parodying because all you have the parody has become the cliche, that's going too far. And that's the same with nostalgia as well. When you get to a place where it's like, well, our decade doesn't have, and I'm not saying this is wholly true, but when you get to a place where it starts to feel like our decade doesn't have an identity of its own, all we can do is go back and try to make 80s and 90s movies, then you've taken that too far. Like, just be influenced by what you're influenced by, and that's how you create something new. It's like the way rap music was born. You start from a place and you sample something, and then you make something completely, wholly brand new that speaks to your generation in a completely different way than the things that you're sampling spoke to previous generations.
Wow. Excellent answer, equipped with a wonderful rap metaphor.
Thanks, man.
I love it. Nothing to add. 559. No, I'm gonna scroll back up here. Sorry. This is from Busted Sim.
Hi, Busted Sim.
I don't even know how to read these words. Cyberdyne, Wayland Yutani, or Omni Consumer Products. What evil 80s corp would you like to work at?
Which one would you like to live in first?
Which corporation would you like to live in first?
No, they're all scary, right? Like, I think all pretty much equally. I guess I would say Cyberdyne, because Cyberdyne doesn't start evil. I guess that's the answer, right? Because the other two seem like they're just... So DJ, one of these is RoboCop, one of these is Alien, and then what was... I
know Alien.
And then what was the other one? The one was Terminator, RoboCop, Alien.
Okay.
The Terminator one it starts from a more seemingly benign place. So, like, at the point... like it itself is not evil. It's what ends up, happening with it's the irresponsibility of it in the first place. Those other two things are just simply evil corporations from the beginning. The people behind them have their hearts in the wrong place. Cyberdyne doesn't start that way. So, like, at any point where you could work for that company, it's probably a more or less, for an individual, fine place to work. And then Judgment Day happens, and everybody's screwed after Judgment Day happens.
Yeah, you don't want that on your resume. Back to the Day Ghost. Oh, here we go. What is your favorite moment in Commando, Evil Dead 2, A View to a Kill, Godzilla 85, and Conan the Barbarian?
So Austin is a jerk, and I hate him. And he's no longer allowed to leave super. If he leaves the super chat, I will take his money and I won't read his question. That's what I've decided. No, I'm kidding. Austin knows I've not seen any of those films, and he did that so that you would read a list of movies I don't know.
Well, I haven't seen them either, Austin. So
those are movies I've not seen yet. I've got Conan on my shelf. I keep Conan. I've got Conan O'Brien, the Barbarian, on my shelf, and I've been meaning to watch that movie, and I just haven't gotten to it.
That's the one on the list that I would be interested in watching, actually.
We could do a blind
commentary. Because it's a fantasy thing, and I've never seen it, and I don't have faith that it's good because it's Arnold Schwarzenegger.
It's his first high-profile movie where he's really got a lot of actual dialogue. Like, it's not actually his first movie, but it's his first major starring role where he's got a big speaking. Yeah.
It's not Hercules. It's actually I hear it's a good movie. Thank you, The Day Ghost, for your constant jabs. 5590ERS, have you ever seen Transformers Beast Wars?
Yeah, it's been a long time, and that's not an 80s thing, but Transformers is an 80s thing. I loved what I saw of it when I was a kid, and I haven't seen it in a long time. The couple times I've, channel flipped and it showed up on TV or something, I've realized that the CG doesn't hold up great, because that was a computer-animated show, but it looked cool at the time. That was on at the same time as the short-lived Spider-Man Unlimited series. They were on, I think, back-to-back, so I would watch Spider-Man Unlimited, and then either continue watching and see that show, or it was before it, I can't remember, but that was circa 98.
Yeah, that's the only Transformers show I've seen.
See, Dagon Spear, this is what I knew was going to happen. Austin, I'm really not okay with the fact that you did that. Commando is just a thing that didn't look cool to me, and I never bothered. I was never into the real, butch macho kill everything kind of movies when I was a kid, and I just avoided them, and then I never went back and bothered with them. It was a long time before I finally saw Predator, and also, and I've mentioned this before, I just don't care for military films in general, super heightened fictional or super realistic. It's just an aesthetic that's never appealed to me. So I've warmed up to it more as time has gone by. Those are just not things that immediately appealed to me. Probably partly why I was always more of a Star Trek guy than a Star Wars guy. Star Wars is military. Star Trek is go explore, except for when it's not. But...
All right. Phoenix Sundance. In relation...
That's a name I don't recognize. Welcome. Hi there.
Well, he says, in relation to In Search of Tomorrow, how would you define the creative sensibility and aesthetic of 80s sci-fi as distinctly different from other eras?
Interesting. That's tough because it builds so much from the 70s aesthetic in the first place, right? There's very much... Well, and also, I don't want to loop everything together either, because even when you're talking about just space opera stuff, it doesn't all look the same, but you're right, a lot of it does feel like it kind of starts from the same place or has a particular sensibility. So when you look at, Last Starfighter, on top of, obviously that's really influenced by Star Wars in the first place, but you look at that, and then you even get to other things where things come from space but we don't go to space, like E.T. or Close Encounters, things like that. There is a vibe that's kind of around, and even again the end of Howard the Duck, there's this vibe. I'm not sure that I can fully put my finger on it. Some of it has to do with the new technologies, I think, that are being used to bring some of that stuff to life, as we're beginning to, use more computer graphics, and doing the early crude stuff. You get Tron in '82. I think '82, and then and that it's some of the first computer graphics and heavily throughout that movie, and then after that you see a lot of things like that with overlays in things like the Star Trek movies and in like I said, Last Starfighter and things like that. So yeah, some of it is the technology. Sometimes it's cheese factor. Certainly, and then some of it is a little bit of like a punk rock thing. We're just being influenced by everything that the 80s is doing right then. But yeah, that's hard to quantify. That's hard to articulate. But I like that you mentioned it, because I'm sure a lot of people have that. I've always felt like that, where like you watch an 80s science fiction film and it distinctly feels like you think about how relative few years there are between something like Planet of the Apes in '68, and then Wrath of Khan in '82, and just how different the sensibilities are. I mean, like, it's weird. We live in a time where things seem to be moving forward so crazy rapidly, like internet time. And at the same time, there are certain cultural things that feel, if not to stagnate, to move like molasses. Like, if you think about, go back to like 2009 up to 2021, where we are now, and I don't feel like the sensibilities of film and television and things have, transformed as rapidly as they did between, like I said earlier, like 68 and 82, or even 85 and 2005. Like it's well, then I'm talking about a 20-year period. Pardon me, but like 85 to the late 90s. Like that feels like 85 to 99 feels like more years to me with a lot of things than like the last 20. Then even going from 01, how is Smallville 20 years old? How is 24 20 years old? 01 to 2021 feels like less time has passed in certain ways. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of that is the age you are during it, because when you're young, like when you're in school, like a couple of years feels like forever. And now that once you get out of that,
Daniel Davis, I'm sorry, real quick. Daniel Davis makes a terrific point, and I wish I'd thought of it. He says, whereas 70s sci-fi is a whole lot more bleak. Yeah, that's right. So when we get into the 80s, we start to have a little bit more joy in exploration again. The 70s is a really experimental period where we're trying to find ourselves again. And right at the end of that decade, you have a massive recession, and we're trying to pull ourselves out of that and figure out what we are economically again as a culture and what we're all about. And some of those big 80s movies come during a period of excess, and I think you can see that in those movies some. And we start, after Star Wars, being interested in exploring the universe and exploring ourselves through that. And that's when the Star Trek movies start using that phrase, like the human experience, or the human journey. And the 70s is a lot more scared that we're going to blow ourselves up. Even though we're still in the Cold War, technically in the 80s, we're not as concerned about it right before the wall comes down. I'm glad that came
all right.
Yeah. We've got 12 minutes. I say 12 minutes. We've got like 16 minutes left of the program, because I opened with a 4-minute trailer. Go ahead.
Reepicheap 775. Would you rather spend the rest of your days in the year 1955, 1985, or 2015?
So do you mean the real 2015 or the 2015 from Back to the Future? Because I think for my own life, 2015 was a decent year. It was right before the insanity that was 2016, so that's kind of a nice sweet spot right there. Like I don't think I would have minded living in 2015, in the real 2015, in the hokey Back to the Future 2015. Yeah, I wouldn't want to live there. They clearly have. First of all, everything is way too expensive, and they've already seemed to have gotten rid of maybe more civil liberties than we have in real life at that point. So like, I probably wouldn't want to do that. Although there is that thing about abolishing lawyers, which may or may not have been a good thing. I'm not sure. Sorry, Dan. Anyway, but yeah, so I don't know, 55. It's hard to say because I didn't experience that. I didn't live it, and I don't have the kind of nostalgia for that I might have if I had lived in that period. But there's, you know, a lot of things obviously culturally we hadn't figured out yet that I'd love to get past before I live in a decade. So yeah, I'm probably saying 85. But if it's between that and the real 2015, probably 2015, because he said he was thinking of the real 2015, so probably 2015.
Yeah. T-Edge 1, you should do a deep diagnostic of all the 80s.
Just the 80s?
That's what he says.
I should just go back and so he wants me to do like the In Search of Tomorrow documentary, which is like really deep dive all 80s movies, except he just wants me to do the 80s. That's already a documentary series. That is available right now on HBO Max. I watched that a few years ago when it came out, and it's cool they've got that there. I like that series a lot, and I recommend it. It's 7 episodes. Each episode focuses on a different aspect of the decade. Those decades series always start with a big deep dive on television, and that's cool. But they never do an episode on film, and I don't understand that. Maybe there are movies that come up in certain places, but I don't think they ever really talk that much about the movies of those periods, and I don't understand that. There's always one on music. I think there's one in the 80s on music. And there's always, like, you know, 2 or 3, like, what was going on in the world and political things and stuff, which is important, but it's weird that there's not one on film, or at least that film's not included with the television. So I don't understand that. But yeah, that's been done already. But it would be, you know, a thing I've considered doing before, and then just maybe taking notes and sitting down and like discussing my experiences, is picking a like year and try to, as best I can, live in that year for a week. So instead of like watching or reading or playing anything current, everything that I do that week has to be from that year. So I would basically like not do a lot of videos and like just concentrate on experiencing the culture of that year. And then at the end, I would sit down for half an hour or an hour and talk about what that experience was like and all the things that I watched. I always thought that would be interesting, just to attempt to live in the past as well as you can, just through its culture, like through its media for a week. I've always wanted to do that.
Wow. I'll add it to the list.
And I've been thinking about doing that for years.
That's awesome. Mr. Roboto, would either of you sign up to become a RoboCop?
No, absolutely not. You'd lose your your individuality, or they would at least attempt to take it away from you. I mean, that's what the social commentary of that movie's all about. Now, if you could guarantee that you wouldn't get directives programmed into you and you would still be yourself, I certainly would take that technology if I got in like a debilitating car wreck or something and I was, paralyzed. Sure, but I wouldn't be a RoboCop.
Nope. Stone Gasman.
Hi there.
Gasman. Hey, Kat.
I always like to call him Stone Gasman because I don't know if Gasman is just like a cool title he gave himself. I've been trying to figure this out for a long time. He's a patron. He's requested things. Stone Gasman's great. Thanks a lot for being here and for the question that we're about to get to. But I've always wondered if that's his real name because it's the coolest name ever if that's his real name.
It's an awesome name. It's really cool. Stone Gasman. Let us know. Hey, Cap, my vote for the most underseen / undervalued show of the 1980s sitcom is Mr. Belvedere.
Yeah,
Did
I haven't
you
seen that
watch
since I was a
it?
kid.
And would you agree?
I don't remember Mr. Belvedere. I can't speak to that right now. I definitely saw it a couple of times when I was a kid, but I don't remember it very well. Sadly, because, you can't talk about this anymore, the sitcom that I most grew up with in the 80s was, of course, The Cosby Show, and was a real fundamental thing for me growing up. I was much more into 90s sitcoms than 80s sitcoms. So, I didn't watch Cheers. I have subsequently gone back a little bit to Cheers, and I've liked what I've seen, but I need to watch more of that. I watched half the first season a couple of years ago, and I've not gotten back. But yeah, 80s sitcoms are a little bit of a blind spot for me because I just missed them because I was too young. And then through the 90s, I was watching some new sitcoms when they came out because, not to talk too much about my own personal history, but I lived with my mom and my dad split up when I was 6 and or almost 7, I guess. They always say 7. I remember it as 6, whatever. And then I lived with my mom here in Kansas until I was 10, and then I moved back with my dad for 3 years. We didn't watch as much TV when I lived with my mom. So in the early 90s, a lot of stuff was kind of a blind spot. I watched, Star Trek: The Next Generation and a few things, but I mean, there was, a lot of blind spots. I missed Fresh Prince. I've just started going back and watching that. I saw a couple episodes when I was a kid, always thought it was funny, never bothered with it. Now I'm watching that with my kids, and Jason loves that show. But then when I moved with my dad, he showed me a lot of more current things. So I grew up with a lot of 90s sitcoms, but a lot of 80s stuff I just kind of missed, like Golden Girls and things like that. I didn't see as much of. But then the other stuff I was watching all the time was 60s sitcoms. So I did see some of that stuff. Watched a lot of older things. Simpsons, of course, I was watching too. Yeah, and then Daghost, he and I talked about in our first Simpsons show, mentions that Simpsons started in the 80s, and there are weirdly a lot of things that I loved in the 90s that began right at the end of that decade, and fundamentally, changed us and got us into what the 90s would turn into. But it's also interesting the number of things that are formative for me, and I bet a lot of people have this, that begin in the 60s or really big in the 60s and then kind of go away for a while and have a huge resurgence in the 80s. Star Trek is that way, Batman is that way, there's a couple other things. It's interesting.
Back to Busted Sim.
Hi.
Given franchise reboots / restarts, whose writing quality is murky at best, has pop writing regressed, or is nostalgia / our comfort with these properties skewing our view of modern day writing trends?
Read that for me one more time. That's a lot to unpack.
Sure. Given franchise reboots and restarts, whose writing quality is murky at best, has pop writing regressed, or is nostalgia / our comfort with these properties skewing our view of modern day writing trends?
Boy, is it a cop-out to say yes? I think both of those things can be possible simultaneously with different things. I think that's maybe something of a depends question. It kind of depends on what it is that we're looking at. I think we do maybe have a skewed view because of that. I don't think I can fully disagree with that. At the same time, I do think a lot of pop writing has absolutely regressed. I think we're a lot more formulaic. I think we play things safe way too much these days. And I know there are folks that don't agree with this and hate it when I say it, but I stand by it. I really think I'm right about this. We have too many writers in Hollywood that clearly don't read. And that's going to just immediately drop your quality standards to some degree. We've got people who are fully influenced by, or seem to be fully influenced by, nothing but the language they hear people speak and not language they read, and it just dumbs down your vocabulary. It just doesn't give you as much to work with. And not just vocabulary. I think you miss a lot of nuance in storytelling if you don't read stories, if you're only watching them. There is a lot of great things visual storytelling can do, but there's also a lot of wonderful stuff that prose can do that can't. You need both, and I think to really effectively write screen fiction, you've got to be reading as much as you can get your hands on, and I think that's hurting us just as much as the nostalgia thing is, and that wasn't happening as much in the periods that we're so nostalgic for, because we hadn't because there were still people who remembered a time when there wasn't a television, or when there were only 3 channels on the television. That is complicated, and I would love to spend more time on it. But that's my immediate reaction to it. I think what you're saying is a factor, but I think the reading thing is also a problem.
TH1, not sure if this is 80s. What is the third seashell used for? Great show tonight.
That is not 80s. That is a mid-90s movie. He's talking about Demolition Man with Sylvester Stallone, which is one of my favorite 90s sci-fi movies. But yeah, he just brought that up probably because we watched that on the Discord a couple months ago. And yeah, that's one of the big jokes in that, is nobody knows what the seashells are for. Nobody knows what any of the seashells are really for. I mean, you can kind of guess, but it's gross if you think too much about it. Moving right along, I'm not even going to explain that for people that don't know what I'm talking about. Everyone should watch Demolition Man. It's a brilliant satire, almost on the level of RoboCop. I put it like right under RoboCop for sci-fi satire.
It's okay, Tom. I also put apparently a 90s movie in the thumbnail because I don't even know when Terminator 2 came out, apparently.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. I mean, it's Terminator. So Terminator's 84. Terminator 2 was 91.
Wow, I didn't know there was that much time in between those. That's crazy. This is why I've been silent most of the show. I know nothing about the 80s. It's my least favorite decade. I don't like 80s movies. It's not my thing. I like older stuff. But yeah, that's why I've not really been talking. Super Billy, which 80s property does not deserve its popularity?
Ooh, that's a tough one. That's hard to say. The go-to you'll hear a lot of people say is E.T. And I kind of have that a little bit too. E.T. is one of those movies where I understand why that was so popular, but it wasn't as big of a deal to me. And I grew up with that movie really hard. My mom was in love with E.T., and I just never fully understood the obsession with that film. So yeah, I would put that in there. But beyond that, because again, like, I get it. It's just, it's not my thing. So I don't know if it doesn't deserve its popularity. I don't know. I'm struggling to come up with a great answer for this. I guess I'm gonna have to stick to that because I can't think of anything a lot better. Goonies, I guess I would throw out there. I don't understand why that's so popular. Never got that.
Dago says E.T. Reaped Sheep says he never understood the popularity of Ghostbusters.
Oh, Alex also said that. Well, I'm not with you there. I love Ghostbusters. A lot of the popularity of Ghostbusters, beyond that comedy, if you appreciate that comedy, was that was kind of like merchandising and licensing genius because of the iconography in that film and how toyetic the whole thing was, and completely accidentally, because you wouldn't think that a bunch of guys in exterminator suits would be like toyetic, but it's got a cool car, it's got neat gadgets. Kids love that kind of stuff, and I can see why, if you didn't grow up with it, you wouldn't understand why it tickled kids' fancies the way it did. But I'm very much of that generation of kids that obsessed over right at the tail end of it, but that obsessed over the look of that movie. Thomas Lowe, A-Team is great. What is the problem with the show, Cap? That's the thing I didn't grow up with and never fully understood people's appreciation with either. I just haven't spent enough time with it. What I've seen of that, it just seems like it's kind of really typical, like 80s primetime drama, where it just seemed a little bit melodramatic to me. Like I didn't believe some of the drama in it, and then after that, it's just about car chases and explosions, which don't do a lot for me. So like I like a lot of the actors in that show, and I get that those character dynamics are what brought people back all the time. So if I'd grown up with that, I probably would have loved it, but it's one of those things that's been difficult for me to get into. I imagine it's like a lot of people have with Quantum Leap. Like I've gone back and tried to watch a little bit of that show, and I don't think it holds up great, what I've seen, but I have nostalgia for it because I grew up with it. So it's one of those things. Some of it has to do with, some of it is you had to be there sometimes.
Oh, is Alex Barron, did that come out in the 80s? Because I 100% agree with you.
What's that?
Christmas Vacation.
I never understood that either. Yeah, and comedy is very relative. I don't get National Lampoon. I've never understood that.
All right, that is the last super chat of the evening. I'm going to jump back to an interesting pre-written from Blue Dragon 5. Hello, Blue Dragon 5.
Cool, and we're just over an hour, so if this is a good enough question, we could end with it, or we could do one more after that if you want to.
You might talk about this for ages. What would you pitch for Batman 78 and Superman 89?
Oh, that's you blew my whole brain up with that. Batman 78 is a James Bond-esque spy thriller kind of thing, where all the iconography is there and you've got gadgets and things, but Batman operates a lot like a spy, I would think is what you would do in the 70s. Superman in 1989, boy, I mean, the cop-out answer is it's more or less the same thing we did in 78, except the backdrop of it is everything that's going on in the 80s instead of everything that's going on in the 70s, right? Like, if you had, you probably wouldn't start with Christopher Reeve because he'd be a little older at that point. I don't think you'd ever think to cast him in 89, but if you had an actor like that, it would be just as poignant, if not more so, in 89 as it was in 78, because 78 is a year where, or just the late 70s in general, where people are feeling kind of jaded and cynical about a lot of things, and you see that in that movie, and Superman kind of shows us how to be optimistic and how it's okay to be a little bit idealistic again, bring back some of those old school values. And in 89, as we've gone all the way through all the like decadence of the 80s and the urban upheaval and all of that, it's kind of time for that sort of thing again, and that actually would have been a perfect time to do a Superman movie if we hadn't done it in 78. So I think you have pretty much the same movie except with 80s sensibilities. But Batman 89 could not exist in 78. It is two 80s, and what little social commentary seems to have begun in that movie but didn't actually come out in that movie, it seems to be all about 80s materialism. In 78, it's about something else. And that is such a, kind of James Bondian era. I think that's what you do with that.
Cool. You want to do a fun one?
Let's do a fun one, absolutely.
Jedi Knight. If you could meet one Mario character, who would it be?
If I could meet a Mario character?
It'd be horrifying. Whoever you pick, it's going to be horrifying.
Goombas just look so much fun to punch or jump on top of. It's just a squish one.
Cap on Goomba violence is a real big thing.
Absolutely. I have a Goomba shaming problem. I really do.
Why you gotta pick on Goombas? Goombas and Oompa Loompas, man. You are the worst.
Goomba Loompas would be the worst. You don't want Goomba Loompa Doompa. No, you don't want that.
Goomba Loompas. That's amazing. That's the best thing. That's like right up there with Turtle Robins and Christmas yams or Thanksgiving yams. Goblin yams.
I would ride in the back of a Koopa Troopas Mario Kart. It'd be like Double Dash, and there'd be two of them, and I would just ride.
Oh,
the back
you'd be in charge of the items.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds good to me.
Super Billy, I'd try and
with you any day.
I'd try and probably fail to go out on a date with Princess Peach.
No, clearly Daisy is the more attractive of the two. Come on.
I need a girl with more substance than that, man. Like somebody that has a bigger vocabulary than Mario. Like,
I mean, I'm going on a date with Waluigi if the question is open. Waluigi's the man. I mean, have you seen Waluigi sings all the parts to Les Miserables? Because it's the best video on YouTube.
I don't think I can bring myself to watch that. I hate that voice, and my wife and I agree. Waluigi is one of the dumbest things that ever happened in Mario. I hate him with a burning passion. It's so dumb. You take the L and you just flip it upside down and it's still Waluigi. That is the laziest thing. I'm not saying I know what it should have been. That's why we just shouldn't have done it, okay?
Yeah. Waluigi's the man. I agree.
Would you rather own an Ectomobile or a DeLorean, says Reapy Cheap? DeLorean, absolutely. Most assuredly. Brandon is not going to be happy. Brandon cannot die happy unless he owns a DeLorean at some point in his life. That has to happen for Brandon.
Oh, but he has such bad car trouble. He's going to wreck it.
It's on, and I love that it's on film too, because I'm just going to take that clip and send it to him.
Oh no! See, this is why you don't sign up to do a show with Cap, because he makes you sign all these papers and he's going to pull any of your quotes and use them at any given time.
Oh yeah. You get to sign a waiver when you when you work on Geekvolution. Absolutely.
Yeah, Geekvolution waiver was at least 30 pages.
Folks, thanks so much for being here. This was a really fun topic, and I was a little concerned that I didn't know this decade well enough, and I wasn't sure how exactly I would approach it. You guys had wonderful, wonderful questions, and I dare say there was enough here, and you guys just kept throwing great stuff at me. We could almost do a part 2 on this. I'm not going to do that on Thursday, but I just, like, if we'd had time and we could have done this for a 2-hour show, we absolutely could have gotten 2 hours out of this. And as I always say, you guys bring so much to the show, and I cannot do it without you, so thanks so much for being here and letting me be lazy and providing so much of the substance of the video. You guys are wonderful, and I really appreciate it. We're going to be back again on Thursday for just a regular Captain Logan show. Not any special theme gimmick thing, but we may have a lead-in topic depending on what happens in the news this week. So I keep track of current pop culture events, and if there's something that you want me to talk about on Thursday, I will absolutely do that. I also want to plug After Dark that night. This week we're going to be doing another blind commentary, this time on Mortal Kombat Annihilation, because I have never seen that movie, and everybody on the panel last night with the new Mortal Kombat movie had seen that movie and were reminiscing and laughing about it, and I've never seen it, and I felt very left out. And people for years have told me to avoid that movie like the plague, but the guys last night, like three guys, all of them acting like it's one of those like fun bad movies, and I'd never heard anyone say that, and so now I want to see it.
I'd agree with that. I think it's a fun bad movie. I kind of want that on the main channel though. It stinks that it's going to be After Dark. Well, $2 a month, guys. You got to sign up.
Well, I thought we would, I don't know, I feel funky these days about most blind commentaries being on the channel, on the main channel. What I'd much rather do is do this, and then maybe eventually, DJ, you and I could do a regular commentary on that. I mean, I say that, we've done some blind commentaries together on things here and there, and we might start bringing some of those back on Marvel Mania at some point. Yeah, that's a good point you're making. I don't mean to be contradictory, but it's my prerogative, and I really wanted to do that. So I think that is going to be After Dark tomorrow night. Who knows? Maybe we'll do it, and if nobody swears, I'll make it public. But the actual live show will be on Patreon at the very least.
Yeah, I'd like to do that someday. That's a funny one to make fun of.
Oh, see, you're just sad because you're not going to be there. Okay.
How do you... Maybe I will be there, sir. Maybe I will.
Oh, okay. Well, you just said that it was too late and you weren't coming to After Dark for the foreseeable future, so whatever.
Mr. Roboto, $2. Cap, in the 80s, your choice, talking car or go bionic?
What is go bionic? Do you mean to be bionic? Or is there something called go bionic? I don't know what that is.
Talking car, I'm assuming he's talking about Knight Rider. Go bionic, is he talking about, when was $6 Million Man?
Maybe that's what he's talking about? Yeah, well, that was 80s. I think, or is that like late 70s? Yeah, I'd much rather have a talking car. Austin says he's going to swear a lot. Yeah, okay. Anyway, that's the plan right now. It could change, but at the moment, that's what I'm planning on doing tomorrow night. Regardless, we will have an After Dark on Patreon. I said tomorrow, Thursday, after the Captain Logan show at 9 o'clock Central Time. And then Sunday will be the Falcon Winter Soldier spoiler cast. So pop in for that if you're so inclined. A week after that, Austin and I right now, if everything works out is according to plan, are going to already be ready to bring in Simpsons Season 2 for a live show that Sunday. We've been working on that, and we're just stoked to do that show, so we're already more ready than we expected that we would be. How many times can I say ready in one sentence?
Don't know.
Thanks a lot for being here, guys. We will see you again real soon. We're gonna get going now. I was Captain Logan. This was DJ of the Martinezes.
See you guys. Ready, Steady, Go. Did that song come out in the 80s? That's a good
No,
song.
that's mid-90s, man.
Oh, 90s. That's in one of the Bourne films, Bourne Identity.
Or I think Ready, Steady, Go is more like, late 90s into the 2000s?
I don't know 80s, guys. It's not why you hired me.
Yeah, clearly, but that's okay. Yeah,
Ready, Steady, Go.
At first glance, I'm having a hard time pulling that up.
What
quick
does
enough.
Ready, Steady, Go and the Mortal Kombat theme have in common? This guy performed to it many times.
Did you
in his
really?
youth. Oh yeah, man.
2000
Mortal Kombat theme was the song to use in the 90s for martial arts demonstrations.
Yeah, if it's the one that I think you're talking about, it was 02.
Makes sense. Around the time of Born Identity. Which it is in a car chase. Anyway.
That song is also, I think, in a Birds of Prey episode. Anyway, thanks for being here, folks. We'll see you again next time. I was Captain Logan. This was DJ Martinez saying goodnight. Good night.